Hi everyone, Susan Storm here, the founder of PsychologyJunkie.com and a certified MBTI practitioner, and today I want to dive into the ENTJ and ESTJ stress responses. We're going to look at what creates stress for ENTJs and ESTJs, how to help, and ways that stress can manifest in ways that surprise the ENTJ and the ESTJ as well as the people around them. Let's go ahead and get started. So before we look at how ENTJs appear when they're stressed, let's take a look at how they appear when they're at their normal equilibrium. On a normal day, ETJs are very focused on competency, efficiency, and logic. They like to organize the world around them to achieve goals and objectives and to get things done in a timely way. They're extremely task-focused. They want things to make sense, they want things to be orderly, and they want things to be on time. These types, being respected is more important than being liked, being competent is more important than being friendly, and it's very important to have high standards, truthfulness, accuracy, and productivity. So ENTJs and ESTJs, the core of their personality involves two different cognitive functions. The dominant function, which is called extroverted thinking, and the inferior function, which is called introverted feeling. Both ENTJs and ESTJs have this spine of their personality. And this spine makes up the core of self for them. So the dominant function is essentially the mental tool we use the most naturally. We don't really have to put a lot of energy and work into using it. We tend to think it's the right hammer for all the nails, the right tool for all the jobs. It doesn't take a lot of energy for us to use it. It doesn't take a lot of conscious effort. When we're using our dominant function, we tend to feel really inspired and energized, and we could keep going and going and going. So for ETJs, extroverted thinking is this dominant function. Extroverted thinking is a judging function. It's all about getting things done, making logical decisions, moving quickly and efficiently towards a particular goal. It's about focusing on the logic of something more than how you feel personally or how other people feel, what makes the most sense. ETJs are really good at moving their feelings to the side so they can focus on what needs to be done in any given situation. It's also very focused on metrics, numbers, what's the return on investment, profits, what's going to get the best reward for the least amount of energy and expenditure. This is probably why ENTJs and ESTJs are the two highest earning personality types in the Myers-Briggs system. I'll put a link in the description so you can see more about that. Now, introverted feeling is at the other end of their personality. This is their inferior function. Introverted feeling is focused on personal values, what feels right to you, what feels ethical to you, what you personally want. Introverted feeling is more sensitive to your inner emotional states and to your personal values. It's more slow, contemplative, and inward focused. So for ENTJs, introverted feeling is something that they do value, they do admire it, particularly in other people, but at the same time, they tend to see it as exhausting to use. Their fuse for how long they can stay tapped into introverted feeling is shorter. It takes a lot more energy for them to use, a lot more focus and concentration, and they often feel vulnerable when they're in the power of their inferior function. They can feel like they're doing it wrong, like they're being too emotional, they're being too sensitive. Their judgment is being too clouded by their personal feelings. So because of that, they tend to sweep introverted feeling under the rug and put it away for another time, and that other time often doesn't show up. However, life doesn't always cater to our personality preferences. There are times when all of us have to use our dominant function and all of us have to use our inferior function. However, when we have to use our inferior function for very long, our fuse for that is very short, and it doesn't take long before we're completely exhausted from having to use it. So let's look at what energizes ENTJs and ESTJs. Number one, closure on tasks and projects, checking that item off a to-do list. This really inspires and energizes both ENTJs and ESTJs. Number two, forward momentum towards goals. ETJs are always checking the status of their goals and how close they are towards completing them. Number three, opportunities for achievement. They always want a good challenge before them. Number four, now this is going to be particularly for ESTJs. ESTJs are energized by continuity, stability, predictability, a sense of knowing how things are going to go and being able to produce tangible results within a known system. For ENTJs, there is more of a focus on trailblazing a new path. So they get energized when they can dream up an idea outside the norm, something that's never been done before, and they can create a strategy for achieving that particular goal. Next, let's look at what creates stress for both of these types. Number one, lack of control over time and tasks. ENTJs hate feeling out of control. Number two, poorly defined goals. They want to have a clear direction of where they're going. Often they like being their own bosses or taking on leadership positions because they can make their own goals and those goals will be very clear. But if they are under someone else's leadership and the goals are not clear, but they still have to follow this person and they feel like the person isn't giving a clear idea of what's needed or where they need to go, then that can create a lot of stress for them. Number three, incompetence, either from themselves or other people. Competence and mastery are extremely important to ETJ types. And so if they mess up, they can feel absolutely overwhelmed with shame. If they're around other people who are being incompetent, then they can get angered very quickly. Number four, doing emotional labor for long or being around really intense emotions. When people are being really emotional with an ETJ, it forces them to really get into their introverted feeling inferior process. And like I said before, the fuse for that is shorter, so they run out of energy a lot faster when they have to stay tapped into their feeling side. So if they're around a lot of really intense emotions, then it can make them run out of energy fast and build up a lot of stress. Another thing that can create stress for ETJs is frequent interruptions. They tend to be very focused and they tend to put all their energy into the task at hand. If they're interrupted, especially with unrelated matters, then it can create a whole lot of tension and stress for them. I know quite a few ETJ parents, and I know one who works from home and has a lot of pressure in her life of things she's got to do. She's constantly being interrupted by her children, often with emotional concerns. And this creates a lot of stress for her. So she's really had to work hard at managing her stress levels and calming her body and calming her mind so that she can respond in an appropriate way. But initially it was really hard because it created a lot of stress and a lot of grip responses, which we'll get to in a minute. Another thing that creates stress for ETJs is illogical behavior. People who make decisions based on heart reasons versus head reasons. People who are not looking at what just makes sense or the pros and cons, but they're going off of sort of evanescent feeling about how things should be. So when ETJs experience stress, the first thing they're going to try to do is tackle it with productivity and logic. They're going to look at what makes the most sense in the situation. They're going to try to push their feelings aside and put all the emotions out of the equation so that they can focus on what's most logical. That means that they will discard any feelings that they see as being irrational. They also become much more focused on accomplishing tasks that they feel will fix the problem. For example, if they're feeling like their life is out of control, they might try to clean everything in their house so that they can feel a sense of control in their environment. If they feel like a work project is going too slow or there's too much incompetence, they might decide to stay up all night long and do everything themselves instead of getting some sleep. If they feel like other people are being too emotional and therefore illogical, they might start criticizing them and being very domineering and judgmental towards those people, pointing out all the flaws in their logic. They may focus on bouncing from task to task to task so that they can feel like they're getting something done, but what they're doing may not be especially important, and they may feel increasingly scattered and frustrated the longer they do this. Now, what happens when ETJs get into a state of grip stress? And what is grip stress? Grip stress is when you have essentially worn out your dominant function. You've put so much pressure on, in this case, extroverted thinking to solve everything. It essentially gets burned out. And when this happens, introverted feeling takes the wheel. And when introverted feeling takes the wheel for ENTJs and ESTJs, they suddenly flip a switch and they start behaving in ways that are really uncharacteristic for them. It can be a little shocking for them and for the people around them. When ETJs are in the grip of introverted feeling, they become more hypersensitive to their inner emotional states. They have outbursts of emotion that they feel are out of their control. They're more likely to feel attacked, persecuted, put upon, or used. They're more likely to take things personally. They're more defensive. They feel more emotionally threatened. They feel more alone and unloved or unworthy. So here's something that is important to note about the inferior function. Most of us feel stressed when we have to publicly use our inferior function. We tend to feel more vulnerability around it. Because of this, we tend to hide away when we're in the grip of our inferior function because we're afraid of being judged or messing things up. So ENTJs, when they are in the grip of introverted feeling, tend to be more reclusive. They tend to hide away because they're afraid of doing or saying something stupid. They're afraid of being irrational. They're afraid of their feelings. They're afraid of expressing their vulnerability. They try to hide and they try to keep repressing those feelings so that they can maintain this image of competence and efficiency. They want to be seen as in control. The last thing an ETJ wants is to be seen as emotionally out of control or too sensitive or irrational. So they often just try to hide away from people so that they can have that emotional meltdown in private. However, ETJs still have a strong tie to their introverted feeling. They do need opportunities to get into the depths of their feelings. But when they're in the grip, it tends to override everything in this really powerful, out of control, chaotic way. Suddenly, they might start bursting into tears more frequently. They might start shouting at everyone about how they're being attacked or used or how everyone's taking advantage of them. They might become overwhelmed by all the things they wish they could do that they've put off because they were so focused on tasks and accomplishment. ETJs often carry a lot of burdens because they are such productive people, and so they tend to take on a lot of responsibilities and take charge for a lot of projects. They're often leaders and organizers in their communities and in their careers. And as much as they may enjoy these things, there is always this sense of repressing their inner feelings, their inner emotions, the things that they want that have nothing to do with tasks. And so when they have a grip response, sometimes they can feel overwhelmed by all the personal ones that they've put to the side in order to focus on tasks and productivity. They can be overwhelmed by all the feelings they've let suffocate while they focused on efficiency and progress. They can start feeling like other people just take advantage of them, like other people are using them. Like the weight of the world is on their shoulders and they can't get any relief. So here are some things that ETJs need when they're stressed. Number one, they need someone to talk to and vent to who will not judge them, overanalyze what they're saying, or get defensive. Sometimes ETJs just need to vent and get all their feelings out there. They may seem overly critical, they may seem even irrational, but they just need to get all those feelings out. And sometimes it's helpful to have someone there who can just be a quiet, steady presence. Number two, and this probably comes actually before number one, is they need some time alone to regain composure. ETJs need some time to get all those feelings out, maybe write them down and process them privately, maybe have that emotional breakdown and cry and sob or punch a pillow or scream into a pillow. They need the opportunity to be alone without fear of judgment from anyone else to get those feelings out. Number three, it's important that ETJs not just constantly repress those feelings because otherwise they're going to get stuck in a cycle of responding to stress very negatively. The inferior function of the ETJ is there for a reason. It's extremely important. It helps to remind the ETJ that they have limits, that they have emotions that matter, even if they're not entirely rational. Not everything can be rational, but it can still be valid. They need to understand that vulnerability and intimacy and emotional awareness matter. They need to understand that they are not emotionless robots who are only focused on task completion, that they are human beings with feelings, and that those feelings can awaken some profound insights for them, as well as empathy and connection with other people. The inferior function in all of us, no matter what your personality type is, helps us to accept our own limits. It helps us to have humility, and it can help awaken us to a side of ourselves that creates more balance, understanding, and growth. For ETJs who are in touch with introverted feeling, who develop a healthier relationship with that, they start to have more empathy for themselves and for other people. They place more importance on things that personally matter to them rather than things that just get the job done. They go after causes that are more personally significant to them, and they take time to actually explore their emotions rather than just sweeping them under the rug. So after some time to be alone and vent or maybe talk to a person who without judgment, having some time to actually process those feelings, to write them down, to really look for any kind of significance or personal meaning in those feelings is important. But you have to get out of that hyper stressed panic mode in order to get there. In order to get out of that hyper stressed mode, taking deep breaths, calming your body, practicing progressive muscle relaxation can be really helpful. You can't target the stress issue until you calm your body down. So if you are an ETJ and you're experiencing a lot of stress, it's important to make sure that you are having a drink if you haven't had enough water today, or that you're stretching if there's a lot of tension and achiness in your body. ETJs tend to carry a lot of tension in their bodies because of all that repressed emotion that they carry around. It can be important to stretch your body, to breathe deeply, get your breathing under control, maybe get some rest if you are exhausted, things like that. Taking care of the physical first is very important. Many ETJs get a lot of help from talking to a therapist because they don't have to worry about the therapist's feelings. They don't have to worry about any ramifications from saying what's been said. They can just vent all their emotions, all their feelings, all their frustrations to this person without worrying about being judged. So that can also be a really helpful thing. Physical activity can also be a great way for ETJs to reduce stress. Many ETJs just being active, getting their bodies moving can be really helpful. Going for a run, lifting some weights, doing some calisthenics, swimming, anything that gets their body moving. These activities actually release stress reducing endorphins in the body. So exercise really for any type can be really effective, but ETJs in particular tend to mention exercise quite a bit as a way to reduce stress, more so than any of the other personality types. Another thing that helps them to reduce stress when they're in the initial stage of stress is just knowing where things are on a project. ETJs hate feeling like they have all this stuff to do and they don't know what's going on with it. So getting a progress update from people around them can be really helpful. So they don't have to keep wondering, where are we on this task or this task? It can really help to ease their stress just to know where things are at. And if they're going slow, why things are going slow. Another thing that can be helpful is a sense of humor, not a mean-spirited, condescending sense of humor that will make things worse. I've seen this a lot. My dad is an ENTJ, and sometimes when he's really stressed out, everyone kind of walks on eggshells around him, and there's all this tension, and everyone's afraid of he's going to blow up and get really angry, and what's he going to do. And one thing that I've noticed is that if I can just point out what's going on and make a joke about it, but not in a way that's belittling, it helps him pull out of that initial stress state. Because the worst thing for him is feeling like everyone's being super scared and not being real and just being worried about everything he might do. That everyone else's tension just makes him feel worse. Whereas for me, if I just called out exactly what was happening and found a way to make it funny, then it would more likely help him to release a little bit of that tension and then work on problem solving. I hope this has been helpful. I have more information about this online at my website at psychologyjunkie.com. I will post some links in the description. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment. I would love to hear from you. If you're not sure about your personality type or you want guidance in better understanding your personality type and your cognitive functions, go ahead and book a session with me. I do type clarification sessions, general coaching sessions, cognitive function deep dives. I can even do a session entirely focused around your shadow function. So I would love to be able to talk to you. I will leave a link to my scheduling calendar in the description so you can book that if that feels right for you. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.